Hey guys, welcome back. This week I'm removing the truck cab from my Kenworth, so I'm going to run through the tools required and you'll just see the process of it coming off. It's, big step forward in this project. I'll run through the tools required for this, and the most important one being a gas axe, because these front cab bolts are seized up. All old Kenworths and autocars etc. are held on by 4 cab bolts. You've got 2 at the front and 2 at the back. That's it. These tend to be stuck, so yeah, just gas axe them off. Easiest way to deal with them. So with those off, it's on to removing kind of the ancillary parts and anything else in the way. Power steering pumps up first. That's held on by 4 9/16 headed or AF bolts. Leave the pipes intact because you're going to replace them anyway, but this way power steering fluid doesn't leak everywhere. That's the other cab bolt I was talking about, and you've got 2 at the back just there, which I'm trying to point out. If you hadn't guessed, the reason for removing this truck cab is so that I can weld it up and fabricate a load of new parts, as it's rotten. So that's the other cab bolt off, and this is the state of the cab cross member. That crusty thing above the mounts is what essentially makes up the base of the cab and supports everything, supports it on the chassis, on the truck frame, and gives it strength. As you can see, it's just gone. So these are the tools you'll need to remove the rear cab mounts. Got my gas axe and a ratchet, because I was going to try and unbolt them to start with. Now you see those holes there give you access to the cab cross member bolts, and you should be able to just undo them if they're not rusted out. Now these should be an 11/16 socket, but someone's metricized it and it's an 18 now. I'm guessing this was done when it went back to Kenworth for a rebuild in, I think, 83, 85, somewhere around there. As you can see, they're just sort of spinning freely, not coming out. This is the other side, so these corroded studs here on the top, that you can see, there's a captive nut and it's just rotted away to the point where it's come away from the cross member, hence why they're just spinning. Plan B, the cab mounts themselves, so these are 15/16, and amazingly they came undone no problem. Now onto the steering shaft. It's a 5/8 nut and a 9/16 head. Undo it. Drift it out with a hammer and punch, and then you're on to the inside bolt. Same setup, 5/8 nut, 9/16 head on the bolt. And from here you're onto the hardest bit, which is compressing the rusted column back in on itself. I just used a large chisel and beat the crap out of it. I did damage the seal slightly, but I can replace this when I go through the box and refurbish it. And I did use a small drift to just expand the UJ coupling, which made it easy to slide off the splines. And well, here it is on the floor. As you see, quite substantial, but it will be refurbished. I'm going to strip the plastic coating off the splines and recoat it in something else. Next up is that air valve. And then the brake valve there that you can see underneath the pedal has to come off. So I'm going to pull the pedal and then drop the valve. It's just held on by a split pin and that shaft that runs through it. Dead easy to remove. So with that out of the way, I can then access the bolts there. I use 12-point ARPs with a 3/8 head, but they're usually a 1/2 inch headed bolt, 5/16 UNC thread. Clutch linkage next. You'll need a 1/2 inch and a 9/16 spanner for this and the throttle linkage. Here are the brake lines and air lines and whatever else. It basically runs everything in the cab. I just marked them up, numbered them, or used some paint marker, and then cut them with the grinder because they're all going to get replaced. The knackered, the stiff, the horrid, the crusty. And the cab is pretty much ready apart from these gear sticks and the auxiliary shifter. The auxiliary and the main are all held on by 9/16 headed bolts. Dead easy to remove, but I will take the vacuum to this and just clean everything up because I don't want any of that crap falling into the box, as it is low miles and I don't want to be splitting the case apart to clean out rust debris. So with all the loose stuff, or the bulk of the loose stuff around the shifter removed, I'm now just scraping up all the nasty dried on oil and gunk, and then I'll vacuum all this up again just to try and make it clean. As I said, I don't want any of that getting in there. And with that done, it's time to break out the mini impact gun. I have made sure the box is in neutral as well, so that's why I'm rocking that. So these just whiz out. There's some of the nicest bolts I've taken out on this truck. Luckily, they just obviously were undercover and haven't had a chance to corrode. One thing to note is the bottom left-hand bolt is about 1/4 inch longer than all the others. So when you if you do take the cover off one of these, put it back together that way. Anyway, with the bolts out, I can lift this up out the way. The springs stay in the box, and then from here I'm going to cover that plate up, that hole up rather, with some tape, and then slide this piece of steel over the top. This just further protects it. It's a two-handed job here, so I had to put the camera down. And now we're ready to move the cab. Just using a pry bar here to make sure everything's loose and good to go. You can see it's rocking, so cue the time lapse and the GoPro video. Just lifting up out the sockets here, and then putting some blocks of wood under. So I started to move it and then realised A, it's way heavier than it looks, a lot heavier than the Autocars cab, even though it's fiberglass. And then you see in a minute, I realise, well, B, I need to make some space because the chevelle's kind of where I want to put the cab. So, time for some sketchy shit. I climbed a very sketchy ladder, attached 2 ratchet straps up to the top of the pillar, and then started using my engine hoist and the ratchet straps to pull the chevelle vertical and stand it on its nose. For anyone interested, it's a 68 chevelle. I will do a video on this at some point when I start building it again, but it needs a load of body work, and at least now it's out of the way and taking up a hell of a lot less floor space. This is Paul, he owns the Mustang. Luckily he came back and lent a hand, because it was kind of a two-man job to get the cab off. This I could have managed by myself. It would have just been a bit more fiddly. So it was nearly vertical, and then, yeah, I did move the ladder because I realised if it falls it's going to crush me if I'm on the side. Tightening up the straps just to make sure it's secure, and then letting the hoist off gently or slowly so it falls over to where I want it. I did throw another ratchet strap around the middle back to the pillar to keep it upright and secure it properly. As you can see, I forgot about the trim panels, or the trim that I'd left on the roof, but they're fine. So to lift it, I'm using a combination of two brothers chains, just because the rock panels were obviously gone. You can see the passenger side one is completely collapsed. So because I can't distribute the load evenly, I've got to put a small ratchet strap on one corner at the back, and then Paul is putting his weight on it as well on the opposite corner, just to try and level it out. But it is free of the frame, and off she comes. From here, it's just a case of gingerly wiggling it away from the frame. That engine hoist weighs quite a lot. It's a 2.5 ton hoist, and it's built like a 2.5 ton hoist, not like these modern ones. So it's just a bit sketchy to move sometimes, especially as the wheels are knackered. I need to replace them, but it is very, very, very low on my priority list. Yeah, you can see some of the wires that I forgot to cut off the bulkhead, but had cut off the engine. Anyway, they're not doing any harm. That's it off, so I'm now going to start to pull it over to where I want it to be and lower it down onto some blocks of wood. From here, next time I'm in the shop, I will take some measurements off it, start to fabricate the pieces I need, and then hopefully once it's got some strength in it again, I'll be able to move it on to the paint guys. I'll also be stripping out the interior, obviously, or the dash, and just working out and labelling all the airlines that go into the internal manifolds inside the dash. I've got some replacement bits that I'm going to steal off the autocar, and I'm also going to take all the lights off the roof that I don't want, remanufacture the AC shell out of alley, and obviously put in the fixings or the riv nuts so I can put my air horns on. But now that it's off the truck, it does make life a lot easier, and I can also get to the engine a lot easier. So it's kind of a win-win for working on the cab, because it's not a height anymore, and a win-win for working on the truck itself. That's it off. You can see the absolute mess of hoses and wiring that's left, and I will be changing the way they're laid out because I don't like the factory layout on that. It's just a mess. Anyway, if you'd like to be kept up to date on this project, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.